Hello, my name is Connor Walker, 38 years old. I live in San Diego, California in a seaside villa in La Jolla, where the Pacific waves gently lap against the shore each night, as if reminding me that life is still beautiful, even though my heart has been shattered for a long time. I am a writer, a best-selling author, and an inspirational speaker, or at least that's what people call me. My books, From Journey Through the Darkness to the Fire Within, have sold millions of copies worldwide, translated into over 20 languages. I've stood on grand stages, from auditoriums in New York to international events in London, speaking about overcoming pain and finding meaning in life. People pay thousands of dollars just to hear me speak for an hour, and I have a management team to arrange book signings, TV interviews, and lucrative publishing deals. I'm not saying this to boast, but my bank account has enough zeros that I wouldn't need to work another day in my life. What I do now stems from passion, personal interest, and the mission I've set for myself. The villa I live in, with its spacious living room featuring floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooking the ocean, an infinity pool on the rooftop, and a garage housing 3 luxury cars, is a testament to that. But the most precious thing in my life isn't money, nor the literary awards, nor the handshakes from CEOs. It's Sophie, my 14-year-old daughter, the only light left in my world. I am a widower. 4 years ago, Emily, my wife, passed away in a car accident. One rainy evening, a truck lost control on the highway, and just like that, the woman I loved most was gone, leaving me with Sophie and a void that can never be filled. I still remember the day I had to tell Sophie that her mother wasn't coming back. She was only 10 at the time, and she didn't cry. She just looked at me, her bright brown eyes sparkling like Emily's, and asked, "Dad, you won't leave me, will you?" I hugged her tightly, promising I'd never leave her, but deep down, I knew I could never replace her mother. Sophie is now 14. She's intelligent, sensitive, and stronger than I am in many ways. She has long brown hair, usually tied up high, and a smile that makes me feel like everything in this world is still worth fighting for. Sophie loves reading, not just my books, but also science fiction novels and children's comics. She also loves to sing, though, in her own words, her voice sounds like a cat yowling at midnight. I cherish the moments we spend together. Mornings when I make coffee while Sophie prepares toast. Evenings when we sit on the rooftop gazing at the sea and talking about everything from her math tests to ideas for my next book. Our home in La Jolla is where I feel most at peace. I have a private writing room with a large wooden desk, a bookshelf that reaches the ceiling, and a wide window overlooking the ocean. On my desk, there's always a framed photo of Emily, her smile reminding me that I must keep living for Sophie. I often write in the early mornings when the sunrise paints the sea golden, and Sophie will burst in bringing a cup of hot cocoa and asking, "Dad, how's the new chapter? Has anyone died yet?" She always knows how to make me laugh. But my life isn't just sunshine and Sophie's smiles. There's a shadow that always lingers, a shadow named family. My original family, the one I've tried to keep at a distance but can never fully cut ties with. My father, Charles Walker, 75 years old, is a domineering, cold man obsessed with money. He was once a real estate tycoon building an empire from land deals in California. My father always prided himself on building everything with his own hands, and he frequently called me a dreamer, unworthy of the Walker family. Writing books, giving speeches, that's child's play, Connor. A man should make money, build something solid like I did, he once said, his voice dripping with disdain, even when I showed him articles praising my writing talent. To him, my success is worthless because it doesn't resemble his. My mother, Margaret, 73 years old, is a more complex figure. She always appears with a perfect smile, a sweet voice, and words of concern that sound genuine. She calls me every month, asking about Sophie, asking about my work. But I always sense an invisible distance. My mother is jealous of me, though she'd never admit it. Once, when I was invited to speak at an international conference in Paris, she called to congratulate me, but her voice was strained, as if she had to force the words out. "You're so lucky, Connor. Not everyone gets opportunities like you, she said, but I could hear the bitterness in every word. I know she doesn't like that I've surpassed what she and my father ever expected, that I've built a life without relying on the family. And then there's Brian, my younger brother, 35 years old. Brian was once my closest ally in the family. When we were kids, we built sandcastles on the beach together, hid in our rooms to escape our parents' arguments. But as we grew up, Brian chose a different path. He wanted to prove himself to be like our father, but all his efforts failed. He started a company, but it went bankrupt after 2 years, leaving a massive debt that our parents had to cover. Since then, Brian has lived in their shadow, working for our father's real estate company and relying on monthly allowances. I don't judge, everyone makes their own choices. But what breaks my heart is the look in Brian's eyes when he sees me. It's a look of envy, of resentment, as if I've stolen his opportunities. Whenever I visit the family, Brian is all smiles and friendly chatter, but his smile isn't genuine. I feel it, and Sophie does too. Sophie doesn't say much about her grandparents or Uncle Brian, but I know she notices the things I try to hide. Once, as we were getting ready to visit them in Newport Beach, Sophie looked at me and asked, "Dad, why do Grandma and Grandpa always want you to come to their house? I feel like they don't really like you." I laughed, ruffled her hair, and said, "They're family, Sophie. Family can be complicated." But deep down, I knew she was right. Sophie is perceptive, and she sees the things I try to ignore. My family lives in Newport Beach in an opulent villa my father bought in the 80s. It's a massive estate with a sprawling garden full of flowers, something I always avoid because I have asthma and a severe allergy to pollen, especially ragweed. I always carry an inhaler, my constant companion, though I rarely need to use it. My parents know about my condition, but my mother loves her garden, and she often says, "Connor, you need to learn to live with nature. Don't be so weak." I just smile, avoiding an argument, but I always check my inhaler before going there. My relationship with my family has never been easy. When I left home at 18 with $200 in my pocket and a dream of becoming a writer, my father called me a fool. My mother cried, but I knew she was crying because she feared I'd embarrass the family, not because she was worried about me. When I published my first book and it became a bestseller, they started looking at me differently. But not in the way I'd hoped. My father began asking about my book sales. My mother asked about the celebrities I'd met, and Brian just stayed silent, but his eyes said everything. I know they look at my wealth, the villa, the cars, the bank account, and see me as a walking safe. I've tried to stay connected with them for Sophie's sake. She loves her grandparents, though I know she senses the insincerity in how they treat her. My mother often sends Sophie gifts, expensive but meaningless things like a designer dress Sophie never wears. Brian occasionally brings his kids to play with Sophie, but I notice he's always probing about my work, my new contracts, as if he's fishing for something. One morning, as I was writing in my room, the phone rang. It was my mother. "Connor, you and Sophie have to come to our 40th wedding anniversary party. It's at the villa in Newport Beach. It'll be fun. It's been so long since the whole family got together." Her voice was sweet, but I sensed an inexplicable pressure. "Mom, I'll check my schedule. Sophie's busy with school, and I have a speaking engagement in San Francisco." "Oh, don't say no to me, Connor. It's a special occasion. Sophie will love it," she interrupted, her voice still gentle but forceful. I looked out the window and saw Sophie lying on a lounge chair outside reading a book. She looked up as if sensing my gaze and flashed me a smile. I sighed. "All right, Mom, we'll come." I hung up, but a feeling of unease crept into my heart. There was something in my mother's voice and her enthusiasm that made me feel like I'd just agreed to step into a game where I didn't know the rules. I tried to push that thought away, telling myself it was just a family party, an opportunity for Sophie to have fun with her grandparents and cousins. The day we set off for Newport Beach, the sky was clear and blue with golden rays of sunlight streaming down the coastal road, making the water sparkle like molten silver. Sophie sat in the passenger seat, earbuds firmly in place, humming along to a Taylor Swift song. I glanced at her and her smile warmed my heart, though my chest still felt heavy. I checked my bag for the third time, ensuring my asthma inhaler was tucked safely in its small compartment. I've had asthma since childhood, and though I manage it well, I always carry my inhaler, especially when visiting places with lots of flowers, like my mother's lavish garden at the Newport Beach Villa. My mother knows I'm severely allergic to ragweed pollen, but she loves her garden more than she cares about my health. "Connor, you need to learn to live with nature," she once said, half joking, half serious. I just smiled, but I'm always cautious. "Are you excited, Princess?" I asked, trying to keep my tone cheerful. Sophie pulled out her earbuds and shrugged. "It's okay, Dad, but something feels weird. Grandma and Grandpa keep insisting we come. They're not usually this interested." I chuckled, patting her hand lightly. "Come on, Sophie. It's just an anniversary party. We'll eat, laugh, and head home." But Sophie's words echoed in my mind as I drove along the winding roads leading to my parents' villa. She's more perceptive than I give her credit for, and maybe she sensed something I was trying to ignore. My parents' villa sits on a hill overlooking the sea, an opulent architectural marvel with gleaming glass walls and a meticulously tended garden. As Sophie and I stepped out of the car, the festive atmosphere was already in full swing. Servers in crisp white uniforms moved through the crowd with trays of wine and appetizers, while soft jazz music floated from outdoor speakers. My mother's garden, bursting with roses, hydrangeas, and plants I couldn't name, filled the air with a heavy fragrance under the glow of the sunset. I took a deep breath, checking my bag again. The inhaler was still there. I told myself I was being paranoid. My mother, in a striking red silk dress, appeared the moment she saw us. "Oh, Sophie, my darling." She hugged Sophie tightly, but her eyes flicked past her to me as if sizing me up. "Connor, you look well. Success changes a man, doesn't it?" I forced a smile, ignoring the way she emphasized success. "Thanks, Mom. You're as radiant as ever." My father approached, dressed in an expensive gray suit, clapping me hard on the shoulder. "Connor, you finally showed up. I thought you'd be too busy signing books or giving speeches somewhere, no time for family." His words were a familiar little jab, sharp and practiced. "I always have time for Sophie and family, Dad," I replied, keeping my voice steady. He just laughed, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good. Today's a special day. The whole family needs to have fun." Brian appeared moments later in a slightly rumpled suit, his grin wide but insincere. "Connor, my man, long time no see." He hugged me, but the embrace was stiff like a formality. Then he turned to Sophie, ruffling her hair. "You're growing up so fast, Sophie. My kids are waiting to play with you." Sophie smiled, but I noticed a cautious glint in her eyes. She nodded and ran off to join Brian's kids, two noisy blonde children playing near the garden. I watched her go, that uneasy feeling stirring again, but I forced myself to blend into the party atmosphere. The party unfolded like a perfectly staged performance. My father stood in the center of the crowd, recounting the story of his and my mother's wedding day, his voice booming like a stage actor's. The guests, friends, business associates, and a few real estate bigwigs, laughed and raised their glasses in toasts. My mother glided between tables, her smile dazzling, but I noticed her glancing at me often as if keeping tabs. Brian, as usual, played the role of the jovial younger brother. He pulled me aside, handing me a glass of wine. "Come on, big bro, spill it. How's the new book going? I heard you're about to sign $1 million deal with a publisher." I shrugged, keeping my distance. "It's going fine, Brian. How about you? Things good at Dad's company?" Brian laughed loudly, but his eyes darted away. "Oh, you know, real estate's always hot. Not as glamorous as you, though, Mr. Self-Made Millionaire, right?" He slapped my shoulder, but the gesture was harder than necessary, like he was hiding something. As I was talking to Brian, Sophie suddenly ran up, slightly out of breath, her bright brown eyes full of worry. "Dad, did you bring your asthma inhaler?" she asked, her voice soft but urgent. I frowned, setting my wine glass down. "Yeah, I've got it. It's in my bag, like always." I pointed to the chair a few meters away where I'd left my bag. Sophie followed my gesture, then looked back at me, still uneasy. "Dad, you should check on it. I don't know, I just feel worried." I smiled, trying to reassure her, but her words made my heart beat faster. "All right, Princess, I'll check." I stood to head toward my bag, but Brian immediately stepped in, grabbing my arm. "Hey, big bro, come on. Dad wants to introduce you to some business partners. They've heard about you forever and want to meet the best-selling author." Brian laughed, his enthusiasm overdone, pulling me toward a group of men in suits standing near my father. "Brian, hold on. I need to grab my bag first," I said, trying to pull my arm free, but Brian held tight, almost dragging me. "Relax, man. Your bag's safe. Who'd mess with Connor Walker's stuff?" He winked, but his smile was stiff, like he was hiding something. I glanced at Sophie, who was still standing there, her worried eyes following me. I wanted to go back and check the bag, but Brian had already pushed me into the group of my father's partners. My father stood there, his voice booming, introducing me as if I were part of his success story. "This is Connor, my son. Best-selling author, self-made millionaire. Who'd have thought the dreamy kid would make it this far, right?" The guests laughed and clinked glasses, but I only nodded absently, my mind still on the bag. I tried to excuse myself. "Dad, sorry, I need to check something." But my father slung an arm around my shoulder, holding me in place, his voice authoritative. "Relax, Connor. Today's about your mother and me. You need to be here." I tried to stay calm, but the unease had turned into a cold wave running down my spine. I glanced at Sophie, who was standing near the garden talking to one of Brian's kids. Then suddenly I heard a scream, Sophie's voice. "Dad, Dad!" She was lying on the grass, clutching her stomach, her face contorted in pain. "My stomach hurts. It hurts so much." My heart stopped. I pushed through the crowd, running to Sophie and kneeling beside her. "Sophie, what's wrong? Tell me." I placed a hand on her forehead, checking her, but she only clutched her stomach tighter. Eyes squeezed shut, her voice trembling. It hurts so bad, Dad. Take me to the hospital, please." Without hesitation, I scooped Sophie up, feeling her small body trembling in my arms. The crowd began to murmur, a few guests turning to look. My mother rushed over, her face full of worry, or perhaps feigned worry, I wasn't sure. "Connor, what's going on? Is Sophie okay?" "She's having stomach pain. I'm taking her to the hospital now," I said, my voice tense, striding quickly toward the parking area. My father stepped in, his voice calm but commanding. "Easy, Connor. Let me call an ambulance. It's not safe to drive her right now." Brian appeared too, blocking my path. "Yeah, man, an ambulance will be here in no time. Just leave Sophie here. We'll take care of her." But Sophie, still in my arms, shook her head frantically. "No, I want Dad to take me. Dad, please." Her voice was desperate, her eyes wide, as if trying to tell me something I didn't yet understand. I looked at my mother, my father, then Brian. They were all trying to keep me there, and in that moment I felt like I was surrounded by wolves in sheep's clothing. "No, I'm taking Sophie. Thanks, Mom, Dad, Brian, but I've got this." My voice was firm as I stepped past Brian, carrying Sophie toward the car. As I walked out of the garden, passing through the villa's main gate, I nearly froze. A small truck had just pulled up at the entrance, and workers were unloading large bundles of flowers. I recognized them immediately, not roses or hydrangeas. They had dark green leaves, small yellow flowers, and a sharp, pungent smell. Ragweed, the flower I'm severely allergic to, the kind my mother knows could make me struggle to breathe, even endanger my life without my inhaler. My chest tightened, not just from the air, but from a terrifying premonition. I looked down at Sophie, still clutching her stomach, but her eyes flicked toward the truck, then back to me as if trying to tell me she knew something. I tightened my grip on her hand, hurrying toward my car. "Dad, be careful," Sophie whispered, her voice small but certain. "I don't think this is a coincidence." I didn't respond, but deep down I knew she was right. This wasn't just a family party, it was a trap, and I had nearly walked right into it. I carried Sophie to the car, my heart pounding in my chest. The air outside the villa's gate was fresher, free from the suffocating floral scent of my mother's garden. But my chest still ached, not just from asthma, but from the growing dread in my mind. The truck loaded with ragweed, the flower I'm so severely allergic to that it could be life-threatening without my inhaler, was still parked at the gate like a silent warning. I set Sophie down in the passenger seat, quickly checking to see if she was okay. Her face was still contorted, hands clutching her stomach, but her eyes were sharp, not like those of a child in pain. "Dad, hurry," Sophie whispered urgently. "Take me to the hospital." I nodded, saying nothing, and started the car. As I drove down the winding road away from the twinkling lights of the party, I glanced at Sophie. She was no longer clutching her stomach. Instead, she sat up straight, her bright brown eyes staring out the window as if deep in serious thought. I slowed down, pulling over on a quiet stretch of road where the dim streetlights cast a yellowish glow on her face. "Sophie," I said, my voice low, "are you okay? Were you really having stomach pain?" Sophie turned to me, her eyes a mix of worry and determination. "Dad, I wasn't in pain," she said, her voice small but certain. "I was pretending. I had to do it to get you out of that party." I stared at her, stunned. "Pretending? Sophie, why did you do that? What's going on?" Sophie took a deep breath as if organizing her thoughts. "Dad, I think Grandma, Grandpa, and Uncle Brian are trying to do something to you. I'm not sure what, but everything at that party, it wasn't normal." My heart pounded harder, but I kept my voice calm. "Tell me more, Sophie. What did you see?" Sophie looked down at her hands, then up at me, her eyes blazing like her mother's. "Dad, from the moment we arrived, I felt something was off. Grandma and Grandpa kept looking at you, but not in a happy or proud way. They were looking at you like they were calculating something. Uncle Brian kept dragging you around, not letting you sit still. I saw him talking to one of the servers, the one in the white uniform with black hair. That guy was standing near your bag, lingering around it like he was looking for something. I think he took your inhaler." A chill ran down my spine. I replayed the memory, Brian pulling me away to talk, his over-the-top enthusiasm like he was deliberately distracting me. I recalled how he stopped me from checking my bag and the way his eyes darted away when I mentioned the inhaler. "Go on, Sophie," I said, my voice hoarse with tension. "I checked your bag by the chair, and just as I thought, your inhaler was gone," Sophie said, her voice steady. "And then I saw Grandma," Sophie continued, her voice trembling slightly as if afraid of what she was about to say. "She was standing in the corner of the garden near the fountain talking on the phone. She was whispering so I couldn't hear clearly, but I saw her looking around like she was scared someone might overhear. She said something about flowers and on time. Dad, I know you're allergic to ragweed. I learned about it in biology class. If you inhale its pollen and have an asthma attack, it's dangerous, especially if you don't have your inhaler. It could be life-threatening." I gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to process what Sophie had just said. My inhaler was gone. Ragweed had shown up. Brian, my mother, my father, they all acted like everything was normal, but Sophie, my 14-year-old daughter, had seen the signs I'd ignored. "Are you sure, Sophie?" I asked, though deep down I knew the answer. Sophie nodded, her eyes glistening but resolute. "I'm sure, Dad. I don't know exactly what they're planning, but I know if you stayed at that party, you'd be in danger, so I faked the stomach pain. I figured if I made a scene, you'd take me away immediately and they wouldn't be able to stop us." I looked at her, my heart squeezed by a mix of pride and pain. Sophie, my little girl, had saved me. She'd seen what I, with all my success and experience, had chosen to ignore, that my own flesh and blood might be plotting to harm me. I pulled Sophie into a hug, feeling her small body in my arms. "You're amazing, Princess," I whispered, my voice choked. Thank you. Sophie hugged me tightly but then pushed back, her eyes serious. Dad, I think they want your money. I overheard Uncle Brian talking to someone at the party, something about assets, and it'll be easier if he's gone. I didn't understand everything, but I know it's not good. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. The pieces in my mind started falling into place. My wealth, the La Jolla villa, the publishing contracts, the bank account, was something my parents and Brian always kept an eye on. My father had asked about my book sales. My mother pried into my investments, and Brian, his envious glances were clearer than ever now. But to plan to harm me? To trigger an allergic reaction for money? The thought made me shudder. Sophie, did you see anything else? I asked, trying to gather more information. Anything, no matter how small. Sophie frowned as if sifting through her memory. When I was playing with my cousins, I saw Grandpa hand something to the server. The one near your bag. I think it was an inhaler, but I'm not sure. Grandpa patted his shoulder like he was giving an order. Then he looked at Grandma and she nodded. I don't know what it meant, but it scared me. I took Sophie's hand, squeezing it gently to reassure her, but inside anger was starting to boil. My family, my father, mother, and Brian had planned this. They knew about my ragweed allergy. They knew I needed my inhaler to survive. And they deliberately took it away, deliberately brought ragweed to the party. But why? For money? Out of jealousy? Or both? Dad, what do we do now? Sophie asked, her voice a mix of worry and determination. They'll know I was pretending. They'll try something else. I looked at her, so proud I could cry. Sophie wasn't just smart, she was brave. She'd pulled me out of that trap, and now I had to protect her and myself. First, I'm taking you home to keep you safe, I said. Then I'll figure out how to handle this. I promised Sophie. I won't let them hurt us. Sophie nodded, but her eyes remained wary. Dad, I trust you, but I don't want to go back there, ever. I drove on towards San Diego. The night road was quiet, with only the streetlights and the distant sound of ocean waves. But inside me, a storm was brewing. My family, the people I'd tried to love despite their lack of love for me, had betrayed me. And if it weren't for Sophie, I might not be sitting here now. When we arrived at the La Jolla villa, I sat on the couch, pulling Sophie to sit beside me. You saved me today, Sophie, I said, my voice choking. I don't know how to thank you. Sophie smiled, but it was sadder than usual. Dad, I just want you to be safe. We already lost Mom. I can't lose you too. Her words cut through my heart like a knife. I hugged Sophie tightly, feeling her warmth, and in that moment I knew I had to act. Not just to protect my wealth, but to protect the life Sophie and I had built. My family may have set a trap, but I wouldn't let them win. The next morning I called my lawyer, James Carter, a middle-aged man with a calm voice and a razor-sharp mind. I'd been working with James since my first book became a success, and he's the one who's helped me manage my assets, publishing contracts, and all legal matters. I briefly recounted what happened at the party, the stolen inhaler, the appearance of ragweed, and the suspicious signs Sophie had noticed. James listened without interrupting, but I could hear him scribbling notes quickly. Connor, these are serious allegations, James said when I finished. If what you and Sophie suspect is true, this could be a conspiracy to cause bodily harm, even attempted murder. How do you want to proceed? I looked at Sophie, who was sitting at the breakfast table, nibbling on a piece of toast. I want to report this to the police, I said firmly, and I want to file for a restraining order. I don't want my parents or Brian anywhere near me or Sophie ever again. James agreed immediately. All right. I'll prepare the paperwork for the restraining order, but for the police report, you'll need evidence. Sophie's a witness, but the testimony of a 14-year-old might not be enough to convince them. Do you have anything else? Security footage, text messages, anything? I shook my head, feeling helpless. No, James. I don't have anything concrete, just Sophie's word and my gut. But I know my family, they want my money, and I think they're willing to do anything to get it. James was silent for a moment, then said, "Then we'll start with what we have. I suggest you set up a trust immediately, transferring all your assets into it and designating Sophie as the beneficiary when she comes of age. This will ensure that no matter what happens to you, your family can't touch your wealth. Do you agree?" "Absolutely," I replied without hesitation. I want Sophie to be safe financially and otherwise. Over the next few days, I worked closely with James to establish the trust. I transferred all my assets, the La Jolla Villa, the money in my bank accounts, book royalties and investments, into the trust, designating Sophie as the beneficiary when she turns 18. James ensured the trust was structured so that no one, not my parents nor Brian, could touch a single cent. "This is the best way to protect Sophie," James said as we signed the final documents. "If your family has designs on your wealth, they'll have to give up when they realize it's out of their reach." I also asked James to prepare the paperwork for the restraining order. "I want my parents and Brian barred from contacting or coming near me and Sophie," I said. "They've gone too far." James nodded. "I'll file the motion today. With what you and Sophie have described, the court is likely to approve it, especially since a minor is involved. But Connor, are you sure you want to completely cut ties with your family? This is a step you can't undo." I looked out the window, watching Sophie read a book on the rooftop, sunlight glinting off her brown hair. "I'm sure," I replied. "They're not family. Family doesn't do things like this." A week later, I got a call from my mother. I hesitated but finally pressed the answer button. Her voice was as sweet as ever, but I could hear the tension in every word. "Connor, I heard you went to the police. What's going on? Sophie had a stomachache and then you left without saying anything. Your father and I were so worried." I gripped the phone tightly, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Mom, you know what happened. My inhaler disappeared. Ragweed showed up at the party. Sophie saw you making a sneaky phone call, saw the server hand something to Dad. Did you think I'm too stupid to notice?" Silence. Then my mother laughed, a strained, awkward laugh. "Oh, Connor, you've misunderstood. There's no conspiracy. Your inhaler probably fell somewhere. And the flowers? They were just decorations. I forgot you're allergic to them. That's all there is to it." I clenched my fist, anger flaring. "You know I'm allergic to ragweed. You know I need my inhaler to breathe. And you expect me to believe it's all a coincidence? Connor, you're my son. I would never harm you." Her voice rose, but I no longer believed her. My father cut in, his voice booming through the speaker. "Connor, that's enough. You're insulting your family. We just wanted a nice party. If you didn't want to stay, just say so instead of making up crazy stories." I took a deep breath, my voice turning cold. "Dad, Mom, listen carefully. I've set up a trust. All my assets now belong to Sophie, and none of you can touch them. I've also filed for a restraining order. From now on, you're not to contact or come near me or Sophie. If you do, the police will step in." A long silence followed. Then Brian spoke, his voice trembling but laced with anger. "Bro, what are you doing? We're family. You really think we'd try to hurt you just because Sophie imagined some nonsense?" "Don't drag Sophie into this," I snapped. "She's smarter than you all think, and I believe her. This is the last time I'm talking to you. Don't contact me again." I hung up, my hands shaking. Sophie walked into the room, her eyes worried. "Was that Grandma and Grandpa?" I nodded, pulling her into a hug. "Don't worry, Princess, I've handled it. They won't bother us anymore." In the weeks that followed, I focused on restoring peace to our lives. The court approved the restraining order, and James confirmed that the trust was fully established. I felt a sense of relief, but the pain lingered. My family, the people I'd tried to love despite their lack of love for me, had betrayed me. But every time I looked at Sophie, I knew I'd made the right choice. She was all I needed, and I would do anything to protect her. In the days following my final confrontation with my family, the La Jolla Villa became a true sanctuary for Sophie and me. The sound of the ocean waves crashing against the shore each night was no longer just the sound of the sea. It was a reminder that we had weathered the storm. I continued writing books and speaking on grand stages, sharing my story, but now every word I wrote, every speech I gave carried a new purpose: to protect Sophie, to safeguard the life we had built, and to never let the past drag us back. Sophie, my brave 14-year-old, became the center of my world. She went to school, devoured thick books I could barely comprehend, and sang pop songs with what she called her midnight cat yowl voice. But there was a change in Sophie, a maturity beyond her years. She no longer mentioned her grandparents or Uncle Brian, but sometimes I caught her staring into the distance, as if reflecting on what had happened. I knew Sophie was hurting, not just from losing her mother, but from realizing that family, people who were supposed to love us, had set a trap for us. "Are you okay, Princess?" I asked one morning as we ate breakfast on the rooftop. Sophie was nibbling on toast, the sunlight glinting off her brown hair, making it shimmer like the sea. She smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in it. "I'm okay, Dad. It's just, I didn't expect Grandma, Grandpa, and Uncle Brian to do that. I thought family was supposed to love each other." I set my coffee down and took her hand. "I used to think that too, Sophie, but sometimes family isn't about blood. Family is the people who stand by you, protect you, and love you truly. Like you and me." Sophie nodded, her eyes brightening. "And I have you. That's enough." Her words warmed my heart, but also reminded me that I had to keep moving forward, not just for myself, but for Sophie. I had lost Emily, and now I had lost my original family, but I had Sophie, and I would do anything to give her a happy life. The months that followed passed with a peace I hadn't expected. I finished the manuscript for my new book, Darkness and Light, a story about overcoming betrayal and rediscovering hope. I wrote it with all my emotions, thinking of Sophie and what she had done to save me. The book was quickly accepted by my publisher, and I received an invitation to speak at a major conference in San Francisco. This time, I decided to bring Sophie along. "You're my inspiration," I told her when she looked at me in surprise. "I want you to see me work." Sophie beamed and we set off together. At the conference, I stood before hundreds of people sharing my journey, not just as a writer, but as a father, a man who had learned to rise after being struck down by those closest to him. When I finished my speech, the audience erupted in applause, but my eyes sought only Sophie in the crowd. She stood in the front row, clapping the loudest, her proud smile making me feel like I had conquered the world. Back in San Diego, Sophie started high school. Like any father, I worried she'd struggle with the transition. But Sophie adapted quickly. She joined the book club where she passionately debated novels and even began writing her own short stories. "Dad, I think I inherited your writing genes," she said one evening, handing me a story about a girl who saved the world with her intelligence. I laughed, but deep down, I knew her story wasn't just fiction. Sophie had saved me in a very real way. One early fall morning, as I dropped Sophie off at school, I noticed a new face among the teachers. She was tall, with neatly tied blonde hair, wearing a light blue sweater and a long skirt, her smile gentle yet radiant. Sophie ran to her, hugging her like they were old friends. "Dad, this is Miss Harper Bennett, my language arts and American literature teacher," Sophie introduced, her voice brimming with excitement. I shook Harper's hand, feeling its warmth and steadiness. "Hello, Miss Bennett. Thank you for looking after Sophie. She talks about your class all the time." Harper smiled, her bright green eyes sparkling. "Call me Harper, Mr. Walker. Sophie's an amazing student. She's smart, sensitive, and has a huge heart. You must be very proud." I looked at Sophie standing beside Harper, her smile radiant. "Yes, I'm very proud. She's everything to me." From that day, I began noticing Harper more. Not just because she was Sophie's teacher, but because of the kindness and intelligence she exuded. Harper didn't just teach literature, she inspired. Sophie told me Harper organized book discussions, encouraged students to share their emotions, and even held extracurricular sessions for writing poetry or short stories. "Miss Harper says everyone has a story worth telling," Sophie said once, her eyes shining. "She makes me think about Mom more, but not in a sad way. Harper and I started seeing each other more often, mostly through school activities. I volunteered to drive for a book club field trip, and Harper sat beside me on the bus chatting about our favorite books. She loved Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, while I preferred The Great Gatsby by Fitzgerald. We debated playfully, and I realized I was laughing more, feeling a lightness I didn't think I could feel again. One afternoon, when I picked Sophie up after an extracurricular event, Harper invited us to a small cafe near the school. "Just to thank you for helping with the club," she said, but her eyes suggested it was more than gratitude. Sophie, with her keen perception, winked at me when Harper wasn't looking. "Dad, Miss Harper is super cool. You should ask her to dinner next time." I blushed, shooting Sophie a mock glare, but she just laughed. From then on, I found excuses to see Harper. I invited her to one of my book signings, and she came, bringing a collection of Whitman's poetry as a gift. "I thought you'd like this," she said, her smile making my heart race. My relationship with Harper grew slowly but naturally, like waves lapping at the shore. We walked along the La Jolla beach, talking about life and the scars of the past. I told her about Emily, the pain of losing her, and what my family had done. Harper listened without judgment, only holding my hand and saying, "You and Sophie are so strong. Not everyone can overcome something like that." Sophie adored Harper. She began calling her Miss Harper with affection and even invited her to our house for dinner. One evening, as Harper helped Sophie make pasta in the kitchen, I stood at the door watching them laugh and joke and felt a peace I didn't think I'd find again. Sophie caught my eye, winked, and whispered, "Dad, I like Miss Harper. You should give her a chance." I laughed, pulling her into a hug. "You're quite the matchmaker, princess." A year later, Harper became an indispensable part of our lives. We didn't rush, but I knew consultants. I had fallen in love with her, not just for her kindness and intelligence, but for the way she loved Sophie like her own daughter. One evening, as the three of us sat on the rooftop watching the sun set over the ocean, Harper held my hand, and Sophie, sitting between us, smiled brightly. "Dad, I think Mom would be happy seeing us like this," she said. I nodded, my eyes stinging. "I think so too, Sophie." Looking back, I realized that the scars of betrayal never fully disappear, but they can heal. My family, my parents and Brian, had tried to harm me, but they failed, not just because of Sophie's quick thinking, but because I chose to stand up and protect what mattered most. Sophie, with her sharp mind and brave heart, saved me from their trap, and in doing so taught me that true family isn't about blood. It's about love and sacrifice. Harper brought light back into my life, not to replace Emily, but to remind me that love can bloom even on ground that seemed barren. I looked at Sophie and Harper, the two most important women in my life, and knew that no matter how painful the past, our future would always shine brightly. One afternoon, as the three of us walked along the beach, Sophie stopped, picked up a smooth pebble, and tossed it into the sea. "Dad, I think Mom's watching us," she said softly. "I think she's happy because we're happy." I took Sophie's hand, feeling its warmth, and glanced at Harper, who was smiling at us. "I think so too, Princess," I said, my voice catching. "And I think Mom would be so proud of you for saving me." Harper squeezed my hand gently. "You know, Connor," she said, "I used to think some wounds never heal. But watching you and Sophie, I believe love can heal anything." I pulled Harper into a hug, feeling my heart beat steadily. "You're right," I said. "Love, and the right people at the right time." In that moment, standing between Sophie and Harper, with the sound of the waves and the glow of the sunset surrounding us, I realized my greatest lesson. Enemies can come from those closest to you, like my family, who exploited my weaknesses for greed. But Sophie's sharp instincts, her pure heart, and her brilliant mind saved me from them. And despite betrayal, despite a once broken heart, I found new love with Harper. Not to replace Emily, but to remind me that life always offers new beginnings when you meet the right people. I watched Sophie run ahead, chasing a wave, and Harper leaned against my shoulder, whispering, "We're going to be okay, right?" I nodded, smiling. More than okay, Harper, we have each other. Life doesn't promise to be easy. The scars from my family's betrayal remain, but they no longer hurt. Sophie taught me that a child can be a guiding light, and Harper taught me that love can heal any wound. With them by my side, I knew nothing could pull us back into the darkness.